So friends, we know, say we have several ideologies, but, like in a sense of the world, propounded by different ideologues. And if we look into the kind of a perspective that the ideologues look at the society, they look at the society from a specific line of thinking. And they also, in fact, know, like in the sense, say benefited from that perspective to analyze the society in order to find out the root cause of the society and the root cause of the inequalities, in fact, in the society. So that way, almost all the ideologues that we know in the world, such great minds have interpreted, looked into the several aspects of the society, the underlying facets that abet, maintain, and promote such kind of inequalities, and they have come out with solutions. They devise the solutions, but not all ideologues have taken the responsibility to see that their ideas, their solutions are implemented on ground. So only few of among them we know, like they have taken up this curve. Like in the sense, when we say that even Karl Marx did not live as a Marxist to see that his ideas have been implemented. Others have seen, and then others, in fact, now have took up the responsibility to implement them. So friends, that way, those people who have actually taken up that task of seeing that their solutions work in the society, and like in a sense, they have dedicated their lives to see for such cause, we call them as pragmatic philosophers. And Tante Periyar ranks, in fact, no, among the top in those such kind of pragmatic philosophers, because his sense of commitment, his courage of conviction, and his sense of sacrifices was, say, quite laudable, is exemplary. So now let's see, like in a sense, what has been his mission actually. See, his ideology, like in a sense, why he has formulated, and how we want to see that the root cause, say, of qualities of the society are to be dealt with. So he envisaged, in his own words, that he want to destroy all the edifices on which caste reasons society in India stands. So all those facets, several different facets, in fact, which contribute to the conception of the caste, the building of that particular kind of unequal society of graded degradation. And in 1950s, in his own words, like in a sense translated, he says this Dravidian movement aims to reconstruct the society on the humanistic and rational basis. So he is not there, in fact, no, just for social reform or to make some kind of a small injections. He said it is a reconstruction, a complete rehaul of the society, and through the destruction of caste, root and branch. So, and then how he is going to do that? Yes, he said very importantly, in bringing together all the Dravidians, irrespective of political and religious affiliations. This, in fact, no, is a thing to be emphasized. He said all Dravidians, like in this, all the victim castes, like also, in fact, no, those who have been into Christianity, Islam, and like even he talked about Anglo-Indians, in his own scheme of things. And he was, of course, very, very importantly talking about the gender, the women. So he said this movement is not a communal organization. He said it's a national movement. So such was the proportion that he has envisioned actually to see that the mission he has taken up going forward. So beginning in 1924, we know all his mobilizations, in fact, now are a call to annihilate caste, like in direct attack to the adversary, the Brahminical Hinduism. In his universe, friends, to resist hierarchy, it required a radical practice of equality. So therefore, he very like in a sense clearly took up the say like in a sense point where he should start. So he started from the cause of taking up the civil rights of the Dalits, the scheduled caste, the untouchables, the unseeables, and unapproachables actually. So right to walk on the streets. And then he went to, in fact, like in a sense, to include like public spaces. So his range of activity is quite vast, right from subhuman level to elevate people from the subhuman level to the highest human level. Quite the range is very, very vast. And if you go by the Marxist dictum, as Marx says, the proletarian, by liberating themselves, they liberate the whole society. So Periyar, in fact, now was taking up that kind of issue of the untouchables, helping the untouchables by liberating themselves to liberate the whole caste society actually. So such a kind of an exercise required it was an issue of transforming the self. Like the people who wanted to take up this responsibility, there is a necessity, in fact, now to understand a radical sense of self and founded on self-respect. So this particular formulation we see, it is transforming self so that, in fact, they take up the responsibility of transforming the society. So this is a kind of a kind of a formula that he picked up, and he has conceived that idea of self-respect as an essential to lead a life of which is free of caste, all inequalities and all. And if we look into the analytical terms, in fact, now that he has deployed to this concept of self-respect, it goes on these three lines: the self-respect at the level of the individual, the samadhamma, actually at the level of the socialist kind of this thing. Probably etymologically, if you see samadhamma, probably may appear as, in fact, no, an antithesis to the manudharma. But if we look into the kind of say explanations that he is being making at different times, samadhamma is, in fact, no, it talks about equitable distribution of wealth in the society. So it has that kind of a say socialist kind of a derivative. And comradeship, we know, friends, it is almost like a committee, the fraternity of people, in fact, to come together, cutting across, in fact, the caste, which negates such kind of a formulation. So in fact, to the left movement in India, he gave that word, equivalent word of comrade for comrade in Tamil, the tolar, which is gender neutral specifically. So friends, if you look into the next aspect in this, the concept of gender that Periyar has propounded, he could decipher the crucial link between caste and gender, like in the sense as other say farmers, ideologues like Dr. Ambedkar, who can see this particular link even right from Buddha as a kind of a social revolutionary. They all, even Periyar, say Jyotirao Phule, and all these icons who fought against caste, intricately, in fact, look the connection of gender actually. So therefore, based on the oppression of women, the castes have been formed and they have been maintained actually. So that is the reason why women, the aspect of women has been very crucial in the conception of Periyar. So he was exactly talking about the mental slavery. See, the system of caste and the system of backwardness that it creates, it is not just a physical kind of a slavery, it causes a mental slavery where the people, in fact, now who are the victims, they become willful and wanton vassals actually. So Periyar was saying, women's freedom and equality with men is the desideratum for civilization. And that is what, in fact, now any humanist should strive for. So, in Periyar's self-respect universe, the biological differences, the male, female, which are simply, in fact, now biological, natural, and important for procreation, but those differences, he said, could not be made the basis for a discrimination. They are simple differences, but the gender as a construct, as a social cultural construct, the masculinity and femininity, where women basically are looked down, and natural differences became the discriminations. And Periyar is saying, the roles, the masculine and feminine roles that the society has assigned, attributed, are interchangeable. So therefore, he counseled women, in fact, now to come out of that slavish and bounded sexuality of Brahmanism, and he asked them to go for a free and responsible sexuality. And yes, he was also making women to be at the level of self-support and self-emanation. Of course, the whole, in fact, paradigm that he started up is a paradigm of self-respect, self-support, self-emancipation, and self-liberation. And gender, in fact, parity becomes an important aspect over here. Yes, coming to the religion, Periyar was quite against the kind of a Brahminical, philosophy of natural inequality. He said, like in the sense, this natural inequality is one which has been rationalizing all these kind of inequalities that the Brahmanism propounds. And he, in fact, incisively analyzed and called Brahminism as spiritual fascism, where the gods themselves purportedly, like in the sense, declared that we have created the people unequally. And he was also talking about the kind of a structural violence inbuilt within the Brahminical religion. And he was talking about even the images of gods are there not as an embodiment of peace, love, compassion, and fraternity. They themselves, in fact, now holding arms. So looking at a kind of a, giving a picture of, in fact, now violent maintenance of inequality. And of course, he talked very vehemently about the hegemony of the Aryan. So friends, Periyar dealt with Brahminism, and his critique was at different levels. It's multi-sided actually. On one was on a particular level, he was talking about the aberrance of labor and touch. On another level, in fact, no, he was talking about the everyday life of religiosity, culture in which the Brahmins mediate. And he has really brought about quite an important dynamic of Brahmin intellectualism. He talked about, in fact, it as a flexibility. And of course, he used the Tamil word, the Balitavarai, where in fact, no, they're quite say dynamic that whatever worked for them, benefit for their benefit, they try to be the other side. And sometimes they'll be very, very orthodox. And sometimes they try to, in fact, no, present a kind of a pretext of being quite liberal. So this is something like Periyar explained. This conscious and determined minority always create conditions in their favor, because society is always dynamic, and whatever changes that come into the society, they are quite conscious to understand them, and they are determined to control them as against an amorphous and ignorant majority. So here we know, friends, in fact, no, like in a sense, the conditioning of the religion, either the institutional authority of religion or the material powers of religion, actually, see, it has been done in other, say, countries by the use of state power. But in India, basically, what Periyar was accomplished is that by rational persuasion and consistent civil opposition, Periyar basically has accomplished that kind of trying to rein in the kind of a religious fascism. And importantly, friends, I'd like to bring in here, he has been all the while forging a flawed platform of dialogue among the victims. The caste society, as we know, it is a psychology. Caste is a psychology. Basically, it doesn't have any physical properties, but that psychology, in fact, no, does not allow a member of a caste to have a dialogue with another caste. It doesn't allow any kind of, in fact, no, like in the sense, exchange of ideas between the victims of the same caste. So therefore, it creates a kind of a feeling that everybody wants to see somebody below them as a kind of a pretension of, like in the sense, salute those who are above, and in fact, no, like you have to crush those who are in the below. This psychology doesn't allow this kind of platform or dialogue. And very, very particularly, quite as in fact, no, say, particularly Periyar is trying to do that. Right from 1924 at Wycombe, we know, like in the sense, he was dealing with the Ilavas. He was writing a letter to the Ilavas, especially the youth, to come and join this movement, because we have to together do that. And he was saying that we shall not miss this golden opportunity. We will take on this particular evil of caste and its, in fact, like in a sense, disabilities together. So at the same time, Periyar has exposed casteism among the non-Brahmins. Yes, he was saying that those so-called quote-unquote Shudras, when they look down at the Adi Dravidas, Periyar said they do not realize that they are Shudras, and they were also basically like put in there. And he said, I am very much conscious of the casteism among the non-Brahmins. And he said, I oppose this particular thing. I do not at all, in fact, no, like approve this kind of a thing. And he said it is antithesis to the struggle that they have been taking ahead. And importantly, he was rallying the youth. Friends, each time he has been exhorting in his, speeches. So in his, say, journals, he was saying the advancement of the country can only be through the social revolution. And what he was saying is, to the youth, he was saying, to fight against ignorant belief and the blind faith should be, in fact, understood as a national service destined for the benefit of humanity. So, like, he was also challenging. He said, any fool can call himself as a theist. It doesn't require a great intellectual to assert the existence of God. But he's saying it requires courage and convictions to make a person as an agnostic or an atheist. So that is how, like in a sense, creating platforms of dialogue and rallying the youth who are energetic and the wise. And he was saying sometime, this movement is for energetics and the wise, not for fools and cowards, actually. So that way, like in a sense, he has been this operationalization of this idea by creating platforms of dialogue, and also, in fact, now addressing the youth is very, very vital in taking ahead the movement. So now I'll come to very briefly, I'll come to the aspect of his ideas about economy. Like since 1932, I think so, like in a sense, after his visit to, say, Soviet Union, his critique of caste was bound with the critique of its material and economic basis. And we know pretty well, like in a sense, he was critical of capitalism, private property, and other things, basically, and dealing with the aspect of women. See, an argument he brought up from angels, and then, of course, nativized to India. He said marriage was central to the reproduction of an unjust social order and an exploitative economic system. It's a wonderful exposition that he has done. And I'll come to the important aspect. In fact, now, today we know about the ideology, or even the arguments, in fact, now, conceptions of Periyar with his cultural capital. But when we look into the works and arguments of Periyar, he was very, very conscious about this cultural capital. He was saying Brahminism creates a cultural capital, and all that associated with them creates a kind of advantage to them, where other people look at them with awe and kind of a respect, and such respectability has been created. And being conduits to all kinds of knowledge, they, in fact, now have the advantage of cultural capital. This is a very, very important aspect that he was talking about. And Periyar, of course, when he mentioned the modern Indian state as Brahmin Baniya rule, he was not just talking about the cultural social core, but he was talking about specifically the capitalist interests, in fact, now, those people. Another facet which I also connect to Periyar later on, but it was Periyar who has very clearly understood the advantages of a linguistic capital. See, his opposition to Hindi is not just as a language, not just something as belongs to North India. He said, he very clearly said, he is not against the North Indians as individuals, but he was against the imposition of Aryan culture. And Hindi as a language brings that kind of a culture and the hegemony of the political Brahminism. And like in a sense, he was very much wary of the nationalist Brahmin Baniya combined, rendered in a narrow sense of Indian nationalism. And he said Hindi brings in that particular hegemony of the upper caste. So this exposition of linguistic capital is quite, in fact, incessant. And it was really an eye-opening for us to understand that in those days itself, in fact, now he could decipher that kind of advantages of linguistic capital, and opposing those purported constructs of the nationality as Hindi, Hindu, Hindustan, and Muslim, Urdu, Pakistan, which were, of course, they're fallacious actually. And Periyar, he himself, in fact, now talked about use of English to avoid the derogatory references in our languages, basically. When he was asked to name children, he used to name them as Russia, maybe Moscow, just to have a gender neutral kind of a references. And the word, of course, like the Todar is gender neutral. So next, in fact, now, friends, when we talk about the politics, I will just now try to be very brief on this, because he has different facets and different dimensions of political ideology of Periyar. But his critique of Indian nationalism and the nation state, because he pretty well knew that the idea of Indian nationalism only is a cartographic nationalism, where it is only a political freedom. But he said there is no social freedom in that. Political freedom gives only the kind of a liberation to the boundaries of a country, but social freedom very particularly gives equality to all those citizens within the boundaries of that particular country. So he was very much, in fact, now on the side of the social freedom. And of course, he was very, very sarcastically, he has criticized the Nehru's interpretation of secularism, which we have been, like in a sense, the country today is plaguing with. The Dravidian nationalism, as he said, like in a sense, is in the expression of right of self-determination, and in the essence, it is a caste-free utopia. So Periyar viewed state as truly Republican, of course, but when he tried to operational thing and all, he was very suspicious of political power. And many times, in fact, no, he noted that power can and does corrupt, not merely in the material sense, but it also pushes one to compromise one's social vision. Of course, some people, they also point out Periyar's support to the Congress government of COMRAD'S, but that political pragmatism, we know, my dear friends, is ethically minded. It was not a kind of a, dilution of his ideology with regard to that. So, friends, since 1920s, we know he was trying for representation, both in education and employment for all non-Brahmins. And when I was, he said his DK is cost-free. And at one instance, one person came to Periyar and told him, I'm an Adi Dravidar, and what will I get if I join DK? Periyar very clearly said, you will not get anything, but you will lose that Adi, prefix Adi before you. We all become Dravidian and we all become caste-free and equal. So such was, see, he was such a person, in fact, like in a sense, giving meat to the lions and milk to the babes. He's a man of masses. Very, very, his ideas, he has put them in a very sarcastic, very, like the jovial, very simple. That's the greatness of a great ideologue. And yes, some people went to Periyar and said they'd like to go and work for Scheduled Caste Federation of Dr. Ambedkar. Periyar, like in a sense, encouraged them. He said, go and work over there. But even if you go there, the DK would work for them, basically. And he was promoting the literacy among the scheduled castes, especially in 1929 itself, like in the sense, he was giving 50% slash in the subscription of courierism. And he was also like, as other kind of anti-caste ideologues, he was very, very critical of the village society. And of course, sometime he talked about urbanism as panacea. And friends, of course, we know DK, it very, very particular instances of casteist violence. It took the side of the sufferers and encouraging of trans-caste marriages. We know that. But Periyar, my dear friends, he has seen himself as a continuum, like in the sense, he is inheriting and transforming the earlier secular traditions. He was talking about Buddha. He said, Buddha has taught people how to question what, why, and how. And he said, after the Buddha, in fact, he talked about the tradition of Tiluvalluvar. And then he was inspired by both Indian as well as Western rationalism and atheism. He fused these two distinctive responses and then brought in that particular social context of colonial rule and the capitalist development. He brought to public life in India a rare and compulsive genius for critical reason, argument, and social mobilization. Friends, I really want to, in fact, share with you the aspect of, in fact, things which have been of late. It is quite saddening that Periyar has to selective distortions in some quarters and construed as being conscriptive, like in the sense he was only talking to some sections of this society. No, my dear friends, if we all look into and discern his holistic endeavors in taking along all the victims of the caste system, such a portrayal is being unfounded and being unkind to such a gallant crusader of equality and human dignity. Periyar, of course, we know he is not sanguine about his own life's work. He said he attempted what appeared to be just and right, but that did not mean justice has been secured. The struggle was difficult, long, wearisome, and arduous. And he's quite aware of that particular thing. And he said the movement should go on as long as we reach the kind of a logical end. Friends, we all know that Periyar is an epitome of self-sacrifice, courage of conviction, and a revolutionary but follower of non-violence, a vociferous speaker. And he was talking, in fact, almost 60% of an year in a particular year, all through his life, actually. And he's an actioner who engaged in a lot of protests and picketing for the sake of people, jailed several times, and he's a man of masses. Friends, particularly, I'd like to conclude, see, in the contemporary times, we know pretty well, like in a sense, the kind of a fascist forces that have been ruling this country. And I want to remind you of the condition which is currently, as with Periyar and also explained by Dr. Ambedkar. In 1945, Dr. Ambedkar was addressing a gathering where the topic where he chosen was saying, is majority always right? is majority always right in democracy? And he was arguing no. He said in a democracy, there will be two majorities. One is a political majority, another is a communal majority. Between these two, he said a political majority is better because it might change after every election, but a communal majority would be permanent. But Dr. Ambedkar in 1945 itself, he was saying, if a political majority joins hands with a communal majority, it leads to a fascist state. And he said, in such a state, on the pretext of national interest, the rights of the individual shall be curbed. Friends, today we see the RSS BJP combine, which has been in fact now governing the country, turning this democracy basically into a kind of a fascist kind of a turn up. We see that rights of the individual, which are paramount in the Constitution of India, are being curbed. Today we in fact now we have been grilled what to talk, what to dress, what to wear, what to eat, and what you think beneath your skin. So in such contemporary times, friends, Periyar shows us the way in achieving that kind of a social polarization of the victims to counter this spiritual and political fascism and this authoritarian populism that India is going through. And this is, in fact, the time, my dear friends. Yes, like in a sense, we rededicate ourselves on this anniversary, birth anniversary, that we should fight about these elected despots. And we will see that this retardation basically stops and we take ahead the movement of liberation, the movement of self-respect, the movement of self-emancipation and liberation goes ahead with the ideology that has been propounded by this great father, Tantai Periyar. Thank you very much.